It has been over 2 years since Paw Patrol was last on the big screen with Paw Patrol the movie. Most enjoyed what it had to offer, and its sequel, The Mighty Movie, since its release on September 29th, is doing similar numbers to that of the first, even becoming the #1 movie in its opening weekend. Like the first, many enjoy it. Others say it's a step up over the first. As for me, I enjoyed the first movie, but can the same be said for the sequel? That's what we'll be doing today by giving you some of my thoughts regarding the Mighty movie without going over any major spoilers from the film, just in case for anyone who hasn't seen the film yet. So let's start this off with Mighty Pups itself. As Paw Patrol fans will know, this isn't the first time the series has explored this concept. 2018's Mighty Pups TV movie was the first take on the pups with powers. I mention this because the Mighty movie is essentially a reboot or retelling of Mighty Pups, and I do like most of the changes and upgrades to some of the aspects and the pup's powers over the TV movie to make it feel different and refreshed from the original. But you can't talk about the superhero films without mentioning the action. In regards to this, I think this is an improvement over the first, especially now with superpowers getting involved. It's not really on the edge of your seat kind of thing, at least with the action, but for me, it's enough to keep you interested on what's going to happen in the movie. Plus, the Mighty movie got a PG rating this time around, whereas the first movie got a G rating. Even with that, the first movie was able to push how far the G rating was able to go with some of the stuff that they did. And with the sequel, in some scenes, you can't see why the rating ended up getting pushed up. With the powers in terms of action, it starts a little bit slow in the beginning, but builds itself up as the film goes along. I'd say the action was the selling point of the film this time around rather than the animation, which in that regard is still pretty good, taking the momentum built in that area from the first movie and improving on it. These include improved visuals, the pups' powers, the pups themselves with better fur textures, and other shots in particular that are spoiler related. It's only a slight improvement, in my opinion, on that, but if you like the first movie's animation, then you're gonna like it here too. Let's switch over to the humor aspect, and I gotta say, I got a kick out of some of the jokes they pulled off, though there were maybe one or two jokes that I cringed at, but nothing really to change my viewing on this. And on a side note, at my showing on release day, which was nearly filled, it was mostly composed of families and their kids. It was nice to hear them have a good laugh over some of the humor, even the parents got in as well, showing it's a good film for the whole family. Moving on, let's discuss briefly about the main story revolving around Sky, who is the main character in this film. Overall, I thought her story was okay for the most part. I liked it, don't get me wrong, but there were a couple of things about that didn't really sit right with me, and it kind of dwindled my opinion down a bit on this film. I do think Chase's story from the first movie is a bit better, but that's just me. I'll talk more about my issues with Sky's story at some point in the near future, as most of the issues that I have are within the spoilers. But let's move on to something more positive, the voice acting. Of course, we got to start with McKenna Grace as Sky, and I really wish I hadn't downplayed Grace as Sky's new voice, because she's actually a good fit for her, and she might be the best VA Sky has ever gotten, in my opinion. Notice sounding Sky was an interesting switch up in terms of voice, but I think it worked really well here, especially during the emotional moments. That's where Grace really excelled as Sky. As for the other team members, it's a fairly good all around. Finley Ed provides a nice similar follow up to what Will Brisbane provided as Ryder in the first movie. Christian Convery provides a solid return to a more older tone of voice for Chase in contrast with Ian Armitage's younger sounding performance in the first movie. Callum Shankar returned for another go-around as Rocky, sounding a lot deeper than in the first movie. Lexington Handspiker and Christian Caro do a fine job as Rubble and Martha, respectively, and I don't really need to say anything on Marcite Martin, just as Liberty, just another solid performance all around, and let's be fair, she's the only one that could do this character so well. The only voice out of the team I was a little bit iffy on was Nyland Parthiphan as Zuma. I was afraid he was going to sound a little bit too similar to Al from Big Truck Pups, whom Nyland also voices. It's there a bit, but thankfully it wasn't there all the time. But still, it's not the greatest voice for Zuma, in my opinion. And then there are the new characters, beginning with the junior patrollers, Tot, Minnie, and Nano. They are nice, young, energetic, and cute characters to bring in the series and a refresher after getting mostly mature pups and cats for most of the series. I enjoy what they had to offer to the table, and easily my favorite new addition in the Mighty movie. Then there's the main antagonist for this film, Victoria Vance. I thought she was a good villain, though a bit generic and slightly irritating at times, but she is one of the more formidable villains the Paw Patrol have ever encountered. And I guess I gotta throw in Mayor Humdinger too, since he's the side antagonist, which in this movie, Humdinger's not that bad. Despite not being the main villain, he is both formidable and humorous. Though, despite that, I wouldn't say he's better in the sequel than the first movie, but despite his limited role, I think he does well for what he is given. Ron Pardo also does another solid performance as Humdinger too. One more thing I want to mention is the soundtrack, which in itself is an improvement. The original tracks are just as good as the ones from the first, and Piner Toprak's score brings the superhero into Paw Patrol. It was a good idea bringing her on, showing that she did have experience in doing scores for superhero movies like Captain Marvel, for example. My expectations for the Mighty movie were not that much. All I wanted was a good film on its own, and I'd say the sequel delivered on that, and I enjoyed what it had to offer. Though the film did have a few issues in the story and a couple of plot points, but everything else was pretty good. It's a nice film for the whole family to watch despite the PG rating, and if you like the first movie, then you'll like this one as well. Let me know down below what your thoughts were on the Mighty movie without spoiling any major events from the movie, of course. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all again next time.